Oh, hello and welcome back to the channel and to a brand new series on this channel. As you can see, I have research glasses on, and that's because I am so excited to introduce this new series. Because none of you probably know that I'm not just a dog owner, a dog lover, but I'm also an art historian. I am a girl with many talents, so to speak. As the human's best friend, dog plays a big role in both our society, history, and in our art. In this series, I'm going to go through what role the dog has played in our history through the lens of art. Because art says something about its time, about its people, and about the society in which it was made. So we can learn a lot about both dogs and our own society by looking at dogs in art. And of course, because I own a Pharaoh dog, this first episode is going to be about the Pharaoh Hound and how the Pharaoh Hound is depicted in art. But let's first give a little overview about how dogs have been represented through thousands of years in art. So the cultural depictions of dogs stretches back thousands and thousands of years. We can even see dogs depicted in caves. In the Middle Ages and during the Renaissance, hunting images was very, very popular. And the dogs were depicted as a symbol of guidance, protection, loyalty, and love. And as the dog became more and more domesticated, the art also represented the dog as a companion, sitting in the lap of the ladies or being depicted together with its family. And in the 18th and 19th century, when it becomes more and more popular to paint home scenes and family life, we also see more and more depictions of dogs. The dogs were important to show that you had the wealth enough to feed them, for example. And also that you had land enough to hunt. So the dogs were thereby a status symbol. As I said, in the 18th and 19th century, the dog portraits became more and more popular. And it was also in the late 19th century, the kennel clubs in both UK and the US were formed. These kennel clubs introduced breed standards, and this contributed to the popularity of dog portraits. But to talk about the Pharaoh Hound, we have to go back to the age of the pharaohs. So let's go back to ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, the dogs were praised companions by the royalty. They were commemorated in art. They were mummified and entombed. The most common dog breed depicted during this time was the Tessim. Tessim is an old word for hunting dog. In popular depiction at the time, they often had pricked ear, slim figure, long legs, and also curled tail. So it looked kind of like a Pharaoh Hound, but had a lot of similarities to the Saluki. Other dog breeds that has similarities to this Tessim, except for the Pharaoh Hound and the Saluki that I already mentioned, is the Basenji, the Greyhound, the Whippet, for example. If their descendant is this Tessim, they have a long-standing history that goes back over 5,000 years. Impressive. So, how important was the dog for the ancient Egyptians? Was it just for hunting, or did it have more value than that? Of course, as soon as something is depicted by humans in art or recorded in any way, it has significance. That is important to remember. Art is status. If you're depicted in art, you are important. That's what history tells us. One of the earliest known recordings of a specific dog is the Kofu Dog. This dog is in the tomb of King Khufu. He reigned between 2609 and 2584 BC. Had to look in my papers for that one. This dog actually has a name, Akbaru. Akbaru is also depicted with a color, which means it is a specific dog owned by a specific person. This is not just herds of dogs that is just for hunting. This is a specific dog that is owned by a specific person and has a very important role in that person's life. Also, the fact that it's depicted in the tomb of King Khufu means that it's a dog that he wants to bring with him into the afterlife, which is of great significance for the ancient Egyptians. And it's not hard to understand why dogs actually is important for the ancient Egyptians if we look at their gods. One of their most important god was Anubis. Anubis is one of the gods that is the most commonly depicted in ancient Egyptian art. The god is important for the burial ceremony, for the afterlife, and for the mummification. The most common representation of him is the body of a human, often a man, and the head of a jackal, or some kind of dog-like figure. He has pointed ears, and he's often standing or kneeling, and he's holding a scale in one of his hands. When you're going into the afterlife, Anubis is responsible to weigh your heart in relation to a feather, and that will then decide if you are welcome into the afterlife. Anubis also have a distinct black color. And this is not necessarily because he's a representation of a black dog. It rather has several symbolic meanings. The black color could either represent a discoloration of the corpse after the embalming and mummification. But the black also symbolizes fertility and possibly the rebirth into the afterlife. So this is why art history is so exciting and so interesting, because a simple thing as a color holds so much meaning to the time when it's made. By understanding these symbols, we can start to understand both the people and the time in a way broader sense. So of course, dogs have a status in ancient Egypt as one of their most important gods is a dog-like figure. So let's get back to this Tessem. Let's say Pharaoh Hound today is a descendant of this Tessem dog. What is the history of the Pharaoh Hound? Well, it is believed that the Phoenicians introduced the Pharaoh Hound to Malta centuries ago. The Pharaoh Hound has since then remained almost the same dog that was brought by the Phoenicians because of geographic isolation. The history of the Pharaoh Hound might have looked very different without the Phoenicians. Phoenicians went from what is today Lebanon, and they sailed the Mediterranean over 2,500 years ago. They did business with luxury items, and it's assumed that it was the Phoenicians who took these African and Egyptian dog breeds and spread them across Europe as far as to Britain. The prevailing theory is that it was the Phoenicians who brought the Pharaoh Hound to Malta to be used as a rabbit hunter. The Pharaoh Hound's name in Maltese is Kelb Tal Fennec, which means rabbit hunter. And the Maltesians have used the Pharaoh Hound in tandem with falcons and ferrets to hunt rabbit on the island. The Pharaoh Hounds are often kept in enclosed areas, because if they were running free, there would probably be no rabbits left on Malta. Today, the Pharaoh Hound is the national breed of Malta. But then comes the interesting part of art history. What has been depicted, by who, and why? As I said, in ancient Egypt, the Tessem dog, or a dog similar to the Pharaoh Hound, was often depicted by the royalty in their tombs and as important figures of the family. But when I did my research for this video, I looked through the 15th century, I looked through the 17th century, I looked through the 18th century, I looked through the 19th century, and no Pharaoh Hound. Why? Up until the 20th century, art was something very exclusive. It was something for the upper classes and depicting imagery that the upper classes or the church wanted. This means that dog breeds that were considered symbols of status often are depicted. The hunting dogs that showed that you had money to buy land to hunt. Or the fact that you could have a dog that was purely a companion because you had the money to feed them. Those are the dog breeds we see in Western art history for a long time. The Pharaoh Hound was both secluded to a very small geographical area, Malta, but it was also a breed owned and used by farmers. It was considered a very easy dog to take care of. It didn't need much food and it could run for a long time. It didn't hunt those massive and impressive preys like deers or moose. They were hunting simple rabbits. This means that the Pharaoh Hound was a farmer's dog, a working class dog. And working class and farmers did not have the money or the means to order artworks, neither of themselves or of others. So art was not something that was common in a household of a farmer at that time. This means that animals, in this case dogs, that are used by lower or working class rarely is depicted in art. This means that the status the Pharaoh Hound or the Tessem used to have in the ancient Egypt slowly decreased and it became a rabbit hunter for the farmers. Because of that, we don't see Pharaoh Hounds. Another reason could be when the kennel clubs arrived. As the kennel club was significant to claim status for some dog breeds, it was important for the dog, of course, to be included in the kennel clubs. And the Pharaoh Hound was not actually approved by the British Kennel Club until 1974. So maybe that's also one of the reasons why we don't see Pharaoh Hounds in art. As I go through this series, I will go through the different centuries, century by century, starting at the Middle Ages, and look at what dogs are depicted, how are they depicted, and why. So we together, through dogs, can understand art, history, and society. Doesn't that sound like a really fun series? I'm excited. I'm also excited because that puts together two of my main interests, dogs and art, into one series. So until next time, take care of each other and your dog, and I will see you soon. Bye.